Welcome back, Truth Seekers, Paradigm Busters, New World Order, Civil Disobedience, Freedom Fighters, Free Thinkers, good people of all types. How's it going? My name is Michael Parker. We are back with Dark Matter. And today's guest is Robert Berringer. He is a retired nuclear engineer. He also has a degree from the Harvard Divinity School. So it's going to be interesting today talking about this mix of science and religion. His book that is currently out is Ancient Gods and Their Mysteries. Will they return in 2012 AD? Now, in the past, we've spoken with people like Giorgio Tsoukalos about the ideas of ancient astronauts and possibly extraterrestrials in our prehistory. And Robert has done a lot of research on this subject. So we're going to be talking to him about that. And without further ado, I would like to welcome Robert to the show. How are you doing?
Very good, Michael. Thank you for having me on your show.
Well, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. It never fails to amaze me that when we talk about Sumeria, Mesopotamia, the Garden of Eden, it's modern-day Iraq. I was hoping that maybe you could start off talking about who the Sumerians are, why they are important to us, and who this group of Anunnaki is that they talk a lot about.
The Sumerians lived in Sumer along the Tigris River, basically. The Euphrates River and the Tigris come together in the Gulf, and their earliest civilizations were in the Delta. In fact, the first city that they record was Eridu, which means earth. They record that their civilization was the gift of the gods. Mm-hmm. They say in their written records, the oldest written records on earth, they record that gods from a planet Nibiru visited Earth and civilized the Sumerians. And they go into very much detail about how they brought kingships and priests, the professions, and taught them writing. And Sumer has the oldest writing. Zechariah Sitchin is one of the experts who can read the Sumerian tablets. It was a cuneiform, the oldest tablets. He has given us a lot of information about the old Sumerians. And
these clay tablets that were found and deciphered by people like Zechariah Sitchin, although his interpretation is somewhat, I don't want to say revolutionary, or it's a bit rebellious in comparison with other people's interpretations. But how many of those tablets were there? I mean, there were thousands, correct?
Right. There were thousands of tablets. They in the desert, like you say, in Iraq desert, they were well preserved, and there have been thousands found. They were made like bricks.
Yeah.
Okay, they were baked clay, and so they were important records. They were baked to preserve them.
And what's important about Sumeria, and you mentioned this, I mean, this is the place where we first see taxation, agriculture, things that we would connote as of being modern civilization, and it just kind of sprang out of nowhere. Wasn't this about 3700 BC, or? Right,
back a little bit before the Egyptians, that date to around 3100 BC. So it's, I guess they call that the fourth millennium BC. So it's going back there. We've been mentioned most of the inventions, but they invented the wheel, and they invented bronze. They invented the city-states, and they had a god in charge of each state and each city.
Now, this planet Nibiru, the Sumerians said that this planet came into our neck of the woods about every 3,600 years, and that they had a leader named Anu, I believe, and he had some sons that were instrumental in setting up Sumeria and civilization.
The high god of the Sumerians was Anu, or Anu. He was the head of Nibiru, a planet that came near Earth every 3,600 years. Now, the Sumerians invented the 60 numbering system. Okay, 60 minutes and 60 seconds, and 60 times 60 is 3,600. So that's the number of seconds in an hour. That's also the number of years in the orbit of Nibiru. I think it's a round number. Okay, I look at it as a round number, and we'll get into it later. As I think the Mayans calendars and numbering were more accurate than the Sumerians.
Well, explain to our listeners this leader Anu, and when the planet came within our vicinity, he sent people down to planet Earth, and why did they come here, and where did they settle?
They settled mostly, I guess, in Iraq, and the records show that they were interested in minerals and especially gold, and they had some outposts in Africa. One name that you've heard probably a lot is Enki. Enki was the first son, number one son, I guess, of Anu, and he was the first one to come to the earth and settled in Eridu, the first city, and this was in Sumer, which is in Iraq, along the Tigris River.
When you talk about Enki and his brother Enlil, and these were the two eldest sons of Anu,
right?
When they describe Enki and many of these other gods, and we'll be talking about some of these other gods, they appear amphibious. Enki also seemed to perhaps have revealed himself as a serpent, possibly in the Garden of Eden story. The Dogons called this amphibious person Nomos. There were sea crops in the Greeks. Do you think this was all the same Enki, same person?
Yeah. The oldest records record that Enki was an aquatic creature. Basically, he lived in the deep. They called Abzu, the deep waters, like the springs, maybe the deep fresh waters, and they say he would go there at night and come in the daytime and teach the Sumerians how to write. Another thing worth mentioning is he was the expert on cultivation of plants and irrigation and canals, and we find again in Sumer the first extensive canals in the world.
Now, a lot of people might wonder, well, okay, if Sumer was kind of the birthplace of civilization, and you're telling us that these gods, the heaven and earth gods, came from above and they helped mankind out, well, some people might wisely ask, well, what kind of mankind was running around? What was it doing? And this kind of gets in the place between evolution and creationism and how we came about, because certainly Zecharia Sitchin and others believe that the Anunnaki had a hand in our evolution and our creation.
Right, I do too. And this might be a good time to start talking about one of my favorite subjects, the old equator. Can we talk about the old equator?
Absolutely. That was one of the things I wanted to ask you about. And I was hoping that during your discussion of the old equator, you might explain possibly how it was our old equator versus the one we have now, but I'll let you take it.
In Machu Picchu, in Peru, not too far from Cusco, the headquarters of the Incas, there's a famous obelisk, which they call the Intihuatana, which means hitching post to the sun. Okay, and it's a real enigmatic obelisk because it's made the hard way by cutting out the mountain to leave the obelisk. So around the obelisk, the mountain is leveled.
Yeah, they didn't cut this thing and drag it up there. They cut it out of existing rock.
They cut it out of solid granite using Stone Age tools, which is hard for me to believe. So, again, I see a sign here of the gods, okay?